Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this Hugs and Kisses macrame bracelet. And it looks like this. So you have all your X's and your O's. And then you have the button and the loop for a closure. It's going to sit like that. And then you have this on your wrist. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So to make this bracelet, the cord that I'm going to be using is a 1mm satin cord, and both of them here. And this is just a black colour and then a red colour that I'm working with. And as for the closure, I'm using a Shank button to go inside the loop that we'll be making. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then what we'll need to do is cut a cord, and what I have here is 4 lengths of about 2.5 meters each, and I just have 2 of my black colour and then 2 of the red one. So 2 of each colour is what we need. Now what I'm just going to do is make sure all the ends are together of these cords, and then take the 2 ends of them and get them together down here. So just like this, and then up at the other end you'll have a bit of a loop here, hold on to, and that's going to be roughly about the middle. So we need to find that, keep hold of that, and then what I'm going to use is my mini macrame board here just to attach them to. So I'm going to place all the cords in the same slot at the top of the board, just like that. And then the middle that I'm still holding on to here, I'm just going to also place in about the middle of the board, just so I roughly know where it is, just to have it for reference. And then on the bottom here, what we need to do is place, I'm just going to place my 2 red ones in the bottom slot, and then leave the black ones loose. That's because I want to use the black ones as the border colour, so that's what we need to start out using to make the loop. So to make the loop, what we need to do is use the square knot. So if you're not too familiar with macrame knots, what I'm going to do is put a link in the description box below to a video that I've done on basic macrame knots, so that might be helpful. But to make our square knots, what we need to do is take the cord. I normally start from my left side, but it doesn't matter what side you start from, as long as you stay consistent, and bring that over the holding cords in the middle here. We're just doing it around both of the red ones. Take the other one, bring that over that, and then underneath everything in the middle, and up through the loop on the other side here. So just like that. And I'm just going to tighten this. So like I said, I'm using the middle of the cords, the middle of the board here for reference. So it sits like that. And then to make the other half of it, what we're going to do is take the cord from the other side over, and then the left one over that, underneath everything in the middle, and pull it up through the loop. So just like this, make sure the first one is sitting where you want it to sit, about the middle there of the board. And then tighten this one, so then your cords are going to stay nicely in place, just like that. So I've now made enough square knots here, so I think I have about enough for half of the loop. So what I'm going to do is turn my board around, just place these 2 up at the top of the board here, just to get them out of the way for now. So we're done with them for now. So what we need to do is then start on the other side down here, to make some more square knots here. So I'm just going to release the black ones, because that's what I'm using to make them with. And then we need to do the exact same thing, go in this direction, because we need to make sure we kind of equal out the length of the cords. So just continue making your square knots on this side. Bear in mind that you'll probably have to start from the other side now, but just because I started from my left side before, but you can kind of see on here, the cord that you always need to start with is the one that's kind of coming underneath a loop on the side. So if your loop is on the right side here, you'll need to start from that one. But otherwise just keep going, make roughly about the same amount of square knots, and then you can measure to see if your loop is going to be big enough for your button. So now that I have a good length here of my square knots, what we need to do is just take it off the board, because we just need to measure it against the button to make sure that it's the right size. So just like this. And then what we just need to do is start shaping this. So we just start from the middle and get it into that loop shape that we want. So just work it around, and once you have it in the shape you want and we fasten it together, it will stay in shape. So just work with it like this. I'm just going to hold on to it down here, take my button, and then measure against it. So just put my button through to make sure it'll go through fairly easily, but also so your loop isn't too big, and that fits just perfectly. So that's the right size here. So what we need to do now is secure the 2 ends in place so it actually stays as a loop. So then to do that, what I'm going to do is place it on my board here, and I'm just going to use some pins to keep it in place so it sits exactly how I want it to. Makes it a little bit easier to work with. So grab my pins and just place them in there. So the two open ends here are going to kind of be facing each other, going right next to each other, just like that. Because then what we're going to do is use another square knot to help secure these two ends in place. So I'm going to take the two outer cords, the two black ones in my case, just the same ones as I was using to make the actual loop, but just the ones that come furthest towards the outside. And then just make another square knot here, the exact same way around all the holding cords in the middle now. Make sure you catch all of them, like that. And then tighten it all the way up. And then do the other side. Make sure you catch all the cords, just like this. And then tighten that. So there are now the ends attached. I can take out the pins and then the loop will stay in shape now, just like this. And there you have your loop closure. So what we need to do now is continue and create the rest of the bracelet. So to do that, I'm just going to pin it back in so it's in a nice working position, makes it easier to work with. And then we need to make a little section first before we start the actual pattern of the bracelet. So pin my loop in place, and then what we need to do is separate out these cords. So the two working cords you just made a square knot with, just keep them up to the side because that's what we're going to be using again. We just need to separate the ones out in the middle here. So what you'll make sure to do if you're using two different colours like me, have two, in my case I'm using the red ones here, so two of the red ones and one black one to one side, and then the other two red ones and the other black one to the other side. So that's what we're going to be doing, splitting them up like this. Because what we're going to be making is some rows of knots here coming out a little bit at an angle so we can get the right shape to then start making the pattern. So the next knot that we're going to be using now is the vertical lax head knot, and what we're just going to do is work with one side at a time here. So put the others out to the side, get them out of the way. I'm just going to start on my left side. So what I want to do is grab these three are now my holding cords, and this outer one that we're left to the side is the working cord. So to make the lax head knot, the vertical lax head knot, we bring the working cord over all the holding cords, back around and up through the loop, just like this. So what we get is what looks like a 6, looping around your holding cords. And then as you're tightening your knots here, because we want these rows to come out at an angle, you need to make sure that you hold your holding cords in the direction that you want the row to go. So I'm going to hold my holding cords like that and then tighten the knot. So that we went over with that one. So now what we need to do is go under, around and through. And we're still getting a normal 6, but it's just looping around the holding cords in the opposite direction. And then tighten that. So we just continue with this now. Go over, around and through. Tighten, and then go under, around and through. And that's one full knot then, over and under. And tighten that. And what we need of these is we need 5 knots to reach out to the side. So once you have your 5 knots in place on this side, we need to move over to the other side and do the exact same thing. So we grab these 3, the 2 red ones and the 1 black in my case. Those are now the holding cords, and we'll be doing the exact same thing except we're switching hands. So now the outer one here is going to be the working cord. We take the first one over, around and through. On this side you get a reverse 6, so that's a way to remember as well. And tighten it, and then go under, around and through. Just like that, and tighten that. And remember to have the row coming out at an angle a little bit there. So the 2 rows are moving out from the middle from each other. And again on this side we'll need the same amount of knots, so that means 5 in this case. So now that we get both sides ready here, and we have the 5 knots on each side, what I'm just going to do again is get some pins just to fasten these in place. This makes it a lot easier to work with when your cords and your pieces are moving around too much. So just roughly where I think they're going to sit, we can always readjust them once we're making the next part here. But just for now, it makes it easier to work with. So now what we need to do is start working on the very first X that we're going to be making. So again, we're starting on one side, but I'm going to separate out the cords. So that means I want all the X's and O's to be my colour. It's just the red one that I'm working with here. This is what I've chosen. So the black ones is going to be the border colour on the outside. I'm going to just put away to the side, just so we don't mix them up. And the same, I'm just going to put those out of the way on the other side as well. And just split them up exactly how I want them to. So the way that I'm going to make the X here is start with one side. We got the two red ones in my case here. One is going to be the holding cord and one the working cord. And we're going to make the same knot as up here. So that's the vertical lark's head knot. So I take the one that's kind of furthest towards the inside, and that's going to be the working cord. The other one is the holding cord here. So what I'm going to do is bring the working cord over, around and through. And then here we're getting what looks like that reverse 6. And then tighten it. And as I'm tightening it, I want this row of knots to be coming back in towards the middle, because then the other side is going to go in like this, and it's going to meet in the middle to create the one half of the X. So when you're tightening your knots, make sure you hold your holding cord in that direction. Just like that. So that was over. Now we need to go under, around and through. Again, get your reverse 6, just looping around in the other direction. And tighten that. And then we keep making our knots. The row of knots here, the vertical lark's head knots. And what we need in this case is 4 of these to reach in towards the middle. So go all the way till you got 4. This is my third one. 1, 4, 1. So we're going over, around and through. And tighten. And then under, around and through. Just like that. That's now worked its way back in towards the middle. On the other side we'll be doing the same thing, just the opposite way around, so mirrored. We take the one that's furthest to the inside is going to be the working cord. We take that over the other one, around and through, and tighten, and then this time you want to tighten it so the row goes again in towards the center, and then under, around and through, and tighten it just like that. And again we want the same amount, so that makes 4 knots we need again to meet up in the middle with the other one, with the row of knots coming from the other side. That's 2, over, around and through, and under, around and through, and that's 3. And the last one, over, around and through, tighten, and under, around and through, just like that. So now we have the 2 sides here. So as you can see, they're going to be coming in towards the middle and meet there. So this is where you might just need to readjust your pins. Maybe they're a bit too far apart or they're a bit too close together. So you can just reposition these so they sit just right for these 2 to meet up comfortably in the middle, just like that. So what we're going to do then is the 2 working cords, I'm going to let them cross over each other there at the back, and then I'm just going to take the 2 holding cords and make sure they come in front. And then I'm just going to take my right one, bring it over the other one. The 2 working cords here, just let them rest to the back. We're not going to worry about them just now. Pull these 2 together, and then we'll make a double half hitch. So the one coming underneath is the working cord, around your finger and through the loop, like that. Because this is to connect the 2 sides. Tighten it. Once more, around your finger and through the loop, and tighten it just like this. So now the 2 sides are connected. And these were the 2 cords we just used. The 2 working cords original from these rows are now just kind of coming from the back there. What we're going to do to continue the X is, as you can see, there's 2 cords naturally coming to each their own side. So just stick them to that side. Starting with this one, the 2 from the middle here, they're the holding cords now. So the other one that's kind of coming from underneath there at the back, that's going to be the working cord. So we're going back to making the vertical lark's head knots now. So we take the working cord over the holding cord, back around and through, the exact same way, and then we go under, around and through, just like this, and tighten. And now what we need to do is continue this row of knots as if the one from the other side is just continuing down in one straight line there. So we go over, around and through, and tighten, and under, around and through. Just like that. And we need the same amount again, so we need 4 of these knots to make this side of the X the same as the other one, so as to make it even. 3, over, around and through, and under, around and through. Just like that. And that's now 4. So again, the other side, this is the last we have left now. We have that one coming from the back. That's going to be the working cord. So take that towards the bottom here, bring it over, around and through. Again, just working with opposite hands on this side. This is where you get your normal 6. Tighten, and under, around and through. And tighten. And we'll need 4 again on this side. Under, around and through. That's 2. So over, around and through, and under, around and through. Makes 1 full knot. And then the very last one, and then this X will be done. We just need to connect the other half of it here as well to the border on the outside. So just like that, that's now the first X. So to now connect the bottom of the X here with the outside, what we need to do is make the border, and we're going to be using the black cords for that. So the way that we're going to do that is again start with one side at a time. I'm now working with the black cords here. So on this side, the one that was originally the working cord is still going to be the working cord from that first row up here that's coming out at an angle. So what that means is the other one here that we had left from that was one of the holding cords, that is now still the holding cords, but instead of having this and the red ones, it's just this one. So what we're going to do is still the same vertical axe head knot. Get the other ones out of the way here. So we take the working cord over, around and through. And this side is where you get your normal 6. Might make it easy to remember. Tighten that all the way up, and then under, around and through. Like that. Now in this case what we want is this row to come straight down to meet with the other side of the X here. So when you're tightening, just make sure you hold it straight down or a little bit to the side to make sure that knot tightens. And as you're building them, and we'll need to make the right amount of knots to reach all the way down comfortably. So in my case that's going to be 6. So that's 3. Over, around and through, and under, around and through. That's 4. We need another 2 to reach comfortably. All the way down there so we can connect to the other side of the X. And last one. Just like this. And there we go. So now what we're going to do is connect the 2 sides here. And the way that I do that is simply just by taking the 2 red cords that's towards that side and bringing them in with that black holding cord. So again, like that first row up here, we're going to have 3 holding cords, 2 red ones and 1 black one. And we just use the working cord to go around all 3 of those holding cords. Just like in that beginning part. Still doing the same knot, over, around and through, tighten, and then under, around and through, and tighten. Just like that. So now that is now connected, the border and the one side of the X. So then on the other side here we need to do the exact same thing. So just take these out of the way. And then we'll need to make that border with the black cords here. So the one that was the holding cord is still the holding cord, and the outside one here is still the working cord. So using opposite hands, we do the vertical axe head knot again, over, around and through, tighten, and so it comes down in a straight line, under, around and through, and tighten. So we want to keep doing this again. Just like the other side, we need the same amount of knots to reach the bottom of that side of the X. In my case that's 6, so I want to make 6 knots here. So now when I have my 6 knots there as well, what we need to do is just bring together the 2 red ones with the holding cord, so we now have the 3 holding cords again. And just use the working cord to do another vertical axe head knot around all of them and tighten that. So just like this. So now that's completely the full X and attached on all sides as well. So that's the very first X. So what we need to do now is start making the first O. So to make that, what we need to do is continue the sides here a little bit, because we can kind of say this X takes up so much space. What we need to do is get down to the middle, because an O obviously won't have the corners like this. It's going to start in the middle of the side there. So I'm going to keep making some of these vertical lax head knots until we reach about what's going to be the middle of this section where the O is going to be. So we already had one. So what I'm going to do is make 3 here, still coming down at in a straight line there, the row of knots, just like that. So that's 4 in total, including the one we did just after the X. Do the same on the other side, just so it's ready. So we have 4 in here in total as well. So again, what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier to work with is just add in some more pins and position these in place just so it doesn't move around too much, because I know I want them to sit roughly like this. So place your pins, and then we'll need to just separate the cords out again as well. So take your border colour, in my case the black one, out of the way, because we're going to be using the coloured ones, the red ones in my case, to make the O. And to do that I'm going to use the same knot again, so the vertical lax head knot, and just separate them out. One's going to be the holding cord and one the working cord for this first section, the first side here. What we need to do though is more knots than when we made the X. So I'm going to start going over, around and through, and then I'm just going to kind of hold, when I'm tightening the knots I'm going to hold the holding cord just roughly in this direction, because what we need to do is have this come up and curve around, but we're going to just sort that out after. What you need to make sure is you don't want to pull this too tight, because we need that little bit of space for the movement to get it into position afterwards. Then go under, around and through, and tighten. So I'm not going to tighten it all the way tight just like I did with the X, just leave a little bit of movement there. Go over, around and through, and under, around and through. So just make a row of knots here. We're going to shape it after, so don't worry too much about it just being a straight line. So once you've made enough knots here that you're going to be able to reach around to the other side with a curve in it, in my case I've made 7 of these knots because it fits just nicely. Remember, you need that curve in, so it needs to just not be a straight line across, but just do an extra 1 or 2. So what we need to do now is do the other half, the other side of it. But what we need to do is, before we start making the knots, I need to bring these 2 cords in between the other 2. So basically bring the row of knots that you just did in between there, but just kind of, not the actual knots but the ends of the cords here, before we start making the other row. And you can just maybe use a pin there to get out of the way, just like that. And then what we need to do is start making the same thing on this side. What I'm going to do is use the right side here, the cord on the right side, to be the working cord, because I want kind of these loops that's going to form on the row to be on the outside on both sides. So I'm going to bring that over the holding cord, back around and through. Here you get a 6, and then tighten it, and then just tighten it all the way up there. So now those cords that you put in between are kind of trapped in there, and then go under, around and through, and tighten. And again, just make a straight row of knots here. Again, don't make them super tight, just so there's a bit of movement in them, and just make the same amount as you made on the other one. So I'm going to make 7 knots in this row as well. So now that I made this row of knots with the same amount as the other side, what we need to do is connect this to that side over here as well. And what you can then do is get a bit of a curve in there. It doesn't have to sit just perfect just yet, because we can always adjust that after. Just get them roughly where they're going to end up sitting. So we're going to do the same principle as we did with the X to bring the cords together again. Bring the 2 red ones in with that 1 black holding cord, so you then have 3 holding cords again. Take the working cord, the black one on the outside, go over, around and through, all 3 of them. And then as you can see, this kind of wants to pull apart or pull out, but just when you're tightening this, keep hold of the black one, just like that, and then push it all the way up. So that end is going to end up sitting right up there next to the other knots. Then go under, around and through. And the second one here, second half of that first knot, is really going to tighten that in place. Just like that. And then we continue just making the same amount of knots on this side of the O as we did on the first side, which in my case was 4. I might as well just do that now. I'm going to make 4 knots here, again coming straight down. So then this side of the O is done. 3, and another one, because then on this side we'll be in position to start the next X. Just like that. And then to secure the other side here, this is where we trapped the ends of the cords on this row in between the other ones. So we just need to, I'm going to get them out from the pin again so it's loose, and then I'm going to just pull these through until the very end of that row of knots sits right there, so you can't pull it anymore. And then again just shape that curve in place. We can always adjust it a bit more at the end, just to make sure it sits how you want it to sit for now. So it sits somewhat correctly, just like that. And then we have these 2 red ones in my case, and then that one black holding cord, that's the border colour. Bring them together again so you now have the 3 holding cords, and then just take the one black working cord, the border colour, and just do your vertical axe head knots again. And tighten, then under, around and through, and tighten. And the same thing as the other side, do the same amount of knots on this side of the O, so we get an even spacing. Again, in my case that was 4, so that's 2. This is the third one, and the last one, over, around and through, and then under, around and through. So there we go. That's now the other side. So now what we need to do is go back and make the next X. So we basically just do that the same way as we made the first one. I just want to take some pins again and pin these ends in place, because you can see they're moving a little bit. So just until we get the X made so they're nice and secure then. Makes it a lot easier to work with. So just so you have an even spacing all the way down through the bracelet here, put your pins in just like that. And then all you do to start the next X, like I said, is the exact same thing. Separate your cords out. So the border colour out to the side, just like that. And then with this colour in the middle, just make the X in the exact same way as I did up here. And then you just continue however you want. Make XO, XO. Just keep repeating these steps using the cords here. And then a little tip as well, what you'll probably find if you keep using the same cords for the working cord, you'll probably find that one gets quite a bit shorter than the other one. What you can do to prevent that is that every time, not necessarily every time, but when you feel like one is getting a bit shorter and you're worried that you might not have enough for the rest of the bracelet to make the full one with just that one working cord, change them over. So then take the longest cord that you have available and use that as the working cord. So that's a way you can make sure of that, so you don't run out of cord midway through your bracelet. Same thing with the outside ones. If one cord you feel is getting too short on the outside, swap them over and use the long one for your working cord. So that way you should have enough to make your whole bracelet. Then keep doing this until you reach the length that you want your bracelet to be. So I've now continued making my bracelet until I've made my last X down here. And then to measure it, what we need to do is obviously figure out what length you want it to be. But we need to measure it from the very top of the loop up here, and then just roughly down to the very last X that I've made here. And what we're going to just do here, we need to still add the button, and then a little section like that triangle up here, we just need to do that as well. But obviously we need to know when to stop making the O's and X's. So I know this one is going to end up being about 7.5 inches long. So to finish off a bracelet and make that little triangle on this end, what we're going to do is start with one side at a time, and the cords are already kind of separated how they need to be. I'm going to start on this side, and then these 3 are still going to be the holding cords. And then to make the vertical axe head knot, again, the same knot that we've been doing throughout. The outer one here is still the working cord. We're just going to continue with that. And remember that we already have the first one here because we used that to cage in that last X. And what we need I go over, around and through, and then under, around and through. And what we'll need here is the same amount of knots as we did in the beginning to make that little triangle. And in my case that was 5. So this is the third one. And remember, we need this rope to be coming inwards towards the middle. So when I'm tightening my knots, I hold the holding cords and pull them in that way. That way the row is going to be going in the right direction. 4, and the last one. Just like that. So then we pull it in and it's going to sit like that. So then now moving over to the other side to do the exact same thing, but just in reverse. These 3 holding cords, take the working cord, go over, around and through. So it looks like that. Tighten it. Remember to pull this row inwards towards the middle as well. Under, around and through. And we also need 5 on this side. Because we already had the first one, this is 2. And now I'm making the third one. Like that. We need another 2. It's 4, and the very last one, over, around and through, and then under, around and through. So just like that. So now they're both coming in towards the middle here, just like that, and they basically meet up just like there. So to then connect them together, what we need to do is make a square knot around all these 6 holding cords now, with the 2 working cords. So just put one over, doesn't matter what side you start with, put the other one over that and underneath all of them holding cords in the middle there, make sure you catch all of them, and then pull it through and tighten it. Just like that. Make the other side over, the other one over that one and underneath everything in the middle. Just double check you catch them all. And through and then tighten it. Just like that. And you can always just pull your holding cords down, so it's as nice and tight as possible. Just like this. So now these 2 sides are held together with a square knot, and now it's time for us to just add in the button. So before we add in the button here, what I just want to do is get rid of some of these holding cords, because we have 6 now, which is a bit too many to finish off with, and also 6 won't go through my button anyway, that little loop. I know 2 cords will, so what we need to do is get rid of 4, so we're down to just the 2 holding cords. So we already have a first square knot there that we just made. So what I'm going to do before I move on is get a bit of glue out, and I'm just going to be using the GS Hypo Cement for this, because it's got a nice, very fine tip there to it. And what I'm going to do, also it dries clear so you won't be able to see it. So before I start making the next knot, because we're going to make just a couple more square knots before I add the bead in, and it's during those knots we're going to then get rid of some of the cords a few at a time. So I'm going to let a bit of glue come out here before I then make the next knot, and then I'm going to put that around the holding cords, basically just below the very last square knot that we made. So all I want to do is just get a bit of glue around there on the actual holding cords, just about 1 millimeter or 2 below. Fill that out nicely. You don't need too much, but just a nice amount. So because then we're going to make the next square knot, and during that knot we're going to cut a few cords off. So this glue just adds a bit extra security to the piece. So just add a bit of glue there. So once you put your glue on there, before it then dries, we just need to start making the next square knot. So again, I start from the same side as before, bring that over, and then the other one over that and underneath all the cords in the middle. And then tighten that, and then when we tighten this, the cords are going to end up sitting basically right on top of that glue there. So that's going to really help to secure this in place. So when we're going to cut some of these off, we don't have to worry that they're going to be going anywhere. So now before I go in and make the other half of this square knot, this is where I want to cut off some of my cords. So I just get my scissor out, and then I'm just going to take the 2 towards the top here, and I just want to get rid of my red ones and then save the black ones to finish off with. So I'm just going to take the top 2 ones here, cut them off nice and close just below the knot, just like that. So we now have 2 cords less. Let me just bring the others in. We now have 4 working cords left out of the 6 that we had. And then before I just finish off that knot, I want to just add a tiny bit more glue, and this is what I'm going to be doing again in the next knot. to get rid of the last two red ones. And the glue is that it doesn't have to be too much, it's just basically to secure it in place so we don't have to worry about it coming undone. So just add a little bit of glue just right around where you cut those cords off there. And then again, before the glue goes dry, make the other half of that square knot that we're in the middle of. So start with the other side, and now we just have the 4 cords to go underneath, and then tighten it. And then when you tighten it, just make sure if you have your little ends left that your cords here going right on top of them, just like that, because then they're going to be hidden in there. So we now basically repeat this step again. So add a bit of glue before you start your knot, your square knot there, just below the previous one, on top of your holding cords there, just enough to get a bit on all those holding cords. And then we'll make the first half of the square knot here, starting from the same side and then going under all of them, all the holding cords, and then when we tighten that, it's going to go right on top of the glue. And then this is where, before we finish off the square knot by making the other half, we want to just get rid of these. We then get a scissor again and go in and cut these last 2 cords off, in my case the red ones. They're here in the middle. Get as close as you can without cutting anything else off. Just like that. So we're now down to having only our 2 holding cords left, in my case the black ones. So again, before we just finish off that knot, just going to add a little bit more glue just to here where the ends are. We have added kind of a bit now along the way, so it's not too necessary, but I like to just do it just for habit really, and the extra security. So just add a little bit of glue like that, and then just like the other times, finish off your square knot from the other side, just to seal these in place, like that. Tighten it and just make sure that if you have little ends sticking out, that these cords to make a square knot goes over them, just like that. So now you have gotten rid of all the cords you want to get rid of, and we're left with these 2 that we're going to put the button on. So I'm going to then get my button here and get it on these 2 holding cords. Just put your cords through and then push it all the way up just like that. And then half of it's going to sit basically on top of those square knots that we just made. It's going to fit just perfectly. And to cage this in place, we're going to do it like if it was a bead that we added. Going to make another couple of square knots on the other side of the button there. So start with the same cord as you've done the other times, and then make your first half of your square knot, and make sure that your cords go underneath there, the button, and tighten it, and then that's basically caged in place by doing this, the other half of it, like that. And what I like to do is just do 2 square knots on the other side of the button here, just for the extra security, and it's still going to be hidden underneath the button, so it's going to look just fine. And the last one, just like this, and there, now the button is nice and secure in place. So now we're basically done making all our knots, so we can take it off the board here. And then all that's left to do is get rid of the excess cords here. So all you want to do is just, I'm going to again get the glue out, and then all you want to do is just the very last knot there. What you'll find is in the square knots you'll have a little well. Put some glue in there, and if you can get in underneath the button, do on the other side as well, and then just around where your cords are coming out. Do that, let it dry, and then cut off the excess. And once you've done that, you'll then have your finished bracelet. So now that we got rid of all the excess cord there, we then here have a finished bracelet. And then we just use the button to go in the loop, and that's the closure for it. So nice and secure like that. And then this will sit around your wrist. So hugs and kisses all the way around. So that's how you make this bracelet. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this macrame bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So we're going to use a technique that's a bit of a variation of the square knot, and incorporating beads into it. So it's almost a bit like a double row with your beads running down side by side. Maybe